So can I show remorse for what my ancestors may have done?
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I mean, like the kid whose grandfather is a Nazi, he's not a Nazi. You know,
But he's taught to atone for it. We're so busy being distracted by this idea of whose fault it is. It's all of our fault. We have to own it, all of us today.
I had a neighbor come over to me when I sold my house and asked me not to sell to a Black person. And I turned around and
Trevor Noah talked about this best, how in South Africa, they atoned for apartheid. There was a whole national reckoning apology. White people still will not apologize for racism. They're so busy saying it's not my fault. I don't want to feel uncomfortable about this. I'm not a bad person. Stop trying to make me the bad guy. Instead of just saying, you know what? My great did some fucked up shit. Let's talk about it. Let's atone for it. Like, how can I now, instead of just living and trying to stay comfortable, how can I work with you? And what can I do to make this world better for the both of us equally or equitably? Yeah. No, you get resistance, you get the pushback, you get the deflection, you get all this. Cut that shit out.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge. Yeah, no, Marietta, I've
real quickly. After. It has a little bit of connection to how things are presented, and I'm just going to go to a Braver Angels concept, which is called common ground. You see people who see things from this side, people who see things from this side, and the effort is, how can we identify values, concerns, proposals that we have that we think they might agree to? And then they do the same thing, and then you try to put it together and come to some. Now, it's not perfect, and maybe it only scratches the surface, but the approach, the presentation really has an effect on the reception and the response. Right.
But I need white people to own that labor, though. That labor of figuring that out. I need white people to own that labor.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is I can liken it to a person that is going before a parole board. If you don't show remorse, if you don't say, you know, I'm sorry for what I've done, you're not going to get paroled. You can talk about how good of a person you are, all of these things. But if you don't atone and show remorse for what you've done, you're not getting out. They're going to lock you right back up.
Yeah.
So can I show remorse for what my ancestors may have done?
Absolutely.
And I mean, like the kid whose grandfather is a Nazi, he's not a Nazi. You know,
but he's taught to atone for it. That's why they keep the museum. That's why the society. You're, as a kid, you grow up, you go to the museum, you're taught that you need to go, you need to understand, and that we still need to atone for this. You are taught that as a child.
Like the woman who apologized to Todd when he was in Germany. She said,
what's that? Exactly.
Yeah, I think some of this is, I think some of this is understanding what's being asked of let's say one another. I'm not going to speak exactly for you, Randy, but I just want to reflect on what I saw. So you shared, should I be responsible for what my whoever did, right? But the instance it was brought to, but you benefit from the system. Now, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Randy, of how you think you benefit or if you think you benefit, but I saw you move from, am I supposed to, yeah, okay, I can acknowledge that, right? Okay. And it's like, so what is being acknowledged? Do we need Randy to say, I'm responsible? Or do we need to say, in this country, there were people who look like me who did pretty bad things, and I also probably still benefit in some way, right? Is that the acknowledgement? I'll put it to Felicia, but anyone can answer. That is desired. Sometimes I think people resist, Felicia, because they think what is wanted is I am responsible for what exists now.
Again, I think that's a distraction, because what they really don't want is the next step. Because after you
What are you gonna do about it?
acknowledge there's a problem, now you got to fix it.
Now you got to fix it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
I hear you.
that's the real problem, because why should I have to fix it? I didn't do anything wrong. Because if you're not actively participating in fixing it, then you're actively participating in keeping it
Being a
up.
problem.
No,
Yep.
that makes
Can
sense.
I understand, Felicia, what that would look like? What would it look like for me to be fixing it? I really want to understand what you're talking about.
Step one is having these conversations, just like what
Okay.
you're doing, right? Like that's
Yeah.
step one, and saying, hey, I don't understand. Step two is, teaching your children, teaching your grandchildren, right? That, hey, this stuff happened and it was wrong and we may benefit from it, but now we have to actively work to make sure we're building an equitable society for everybody that's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't rest on your laurels.
Mhm.
Step three is talking to your friends, educating your friends, bringing them into conversations that are uncomfortable for them and saying, hey, I'm gonna hold you up, but we all need to do this. This is a us problem and us got to fix it together, and bringing people along. And people who are resistant, tell them, okay, the society is changing. You've already seen some changes. You about to get left behind.
May
then
I
Maybe
step
making
five?
some economic decisions, like who you hire, who you
Yeah.
work with, who
Who
you
you hire,
give the
you work
opportunities
with.
to, if you have the chance.
Yes, and then also supporting Black businesses, supporting Hispanic business, supporting, going out of your comfort zone to actively do these things in your personal life that make for a more equitable society. That is the solution, but everybody's got to buy in and everybody's got to do it. And knowing that some people are not, because they want to hold on to this idea of power, that it is in whiteness. They say white power for a reason.
Andre, you wanted to add a step 5?
Yeah,
or
I
six?
totally want to add a step 5 to make
That's
it
a lot of steps. We got a lot of homework here.
It's a lot of work.
but it's all integrated. But and it's easier to do than you think, because the reason. So, like I said, maybe I've shared with some of you, a leading consulting company after the Floyd incident wrote sort of like a state of the Black community in the United States. We make $1 million less on average than white people. Black women are the lowest paid in the corporate hierarchy structure. Black people and people of color are more likely to live close to industrial sites that has poor air quality, poor water quality. Number 3, we are charged the highest mortgage rates if we can even qualify for a mortgage. Those are the real everyday things that are impacting our lives. So when I hear a question of how can to quote Oprah, if you are mindful of wanting to create an equitable society, the opportunities will present themselves. You just have to follow. But it will present itself, whether it's talking to a friend, whether it's educating a child, a grandchild, or whatever. But if you live in that space, the opportunity is going to present itself, and you will be a change agent, and you will also be a hero or a heroine, since we're with women.
Yeah.
So, I've seen myself as that person my whole life, but that's me. I mean, I sat down and watched Roots with my kids. I mean, I don't know if saw that movie, and I thought it was a good movie, and I thought it really showed what that time was like. So they were aware. We talked about it. I don't think I was aware back then the extent to which society discriminated, so I couldn't have shared it. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I had a neighbor come over to me when I sold my house and asked me not to sell to a Black person. And I turned around and said, oh, that's too bad. I'm going to sell to whoever wants to buy it. And, so I've been clearly my whole life, at least, trying to live that way. So I think the thing that I can't say every person like.
We're asking now for you to go deeper.
Okay.
So
That's
I can address this, because I've not only that, I've done some research about this, let's be very concrete. Like when you said I watched Roots, And I want you to understand what it feels like for us. Girl, Felicia, you already know. And
Okay, I assumed that there was some.
The Lord is with me, so I'm not about to go off or go crazy. But when we hear that, it number one, it sounds performative, and it's like, well, race relations are all about the way that movie, contextualized Black people and Black and white relations. And so as the world has evolved, and equity is not, so equity has two dimensions. It's expansive and it's deep. So sometimes something can be expansive, but it's only on the surface level. And here in 2023, and that's kind of how I feel as I sit here in this moment, thinking about roots, like that was a spark to spark an awareness. But
don't forget, this was in the 70s. This was like in late 70s. So
late 70s, and it was radical and ground. I think it still holds television records, by the way.
Yeah.
So it was radical and groundbreaking for that time. But now we want to go deeper in the lake of equity. So instead of staying on the surface of just now raising the awareness that a conversation needs to be had, not only do we want a conversation, we want tangible outputs, which is why whenever we have this, I'm always very specific that Black people earn on average $1 million less than white people. That is private schools, that's vacations, that's that's equity, that's wealth creation, right? And to the extent that you are able to, let's say in that example, address it, then that's when you stand up. What I have found now that I've become a middle-aged man and all of my living and partying on several continents is that when you want something to happen, like a drink, because this is going long, it's going to present itself.
I'm just going to stand. Go ahead.
It's going to present itself. So what I think, I can't, tell you what to take away from this conversation, Randy, but you clearly have a desire and a passion for an equitable world. That's no doubt, because you're here and you agreed to it. And now as the opportunities present themselves, ask yourself, can we go deeper? I'll offer something from my own life. I ascribe a lot of stereotypes to white people. So I grew up thinking that y'all were all wealthy and you were all cultivated and all this, that, and the other. And so when I got around white people as an adult, I'm like, these people are common. and I realized I was fancier than they. That's when I was like, I was sold something. So like, if you come to my house and you come to Todd's house, trust me, it'll be two different, because people marvel at when I put formal place settings before them. No one ever knows what to do with an AP's place setting, but whatever. And so what I say is, I'm saying all this to say that I've had opportunities through this gift that Todd has brought into my life of changing radically my way of thinking and approach to dealing with people, letting go some of my stereotypes and expectations. And also I've integrated the knowledge of a Michelle and a Felicia and all of our other Black guests and seeing ways where maybe the conversation could go deeper, but more than anything, we want that deep conversation with tangible outputs.
Yeah. And, I feel like, Randy, no one is asking you per se to give up. I don't think. I'm not going to speak for Andre, Felicia, Michelle, anybody. But Andre and I disagree about things. There are things we live different worlds, right? I have a certain view of what the average white person is like, and he has a different view of what the average white person is like. We have different experiences. Andre's never asked me to give up how I see the world necessarily, or views on how to move forward, right? Because Andre's talking about outcomes, but I'm sure if we talked about how do we get there, we're going to have all sorts of different views about how to get there, because we're politically different in this room, just to let you all know. It's a very diverse political room right now. And no one's asking you necessarily to get rid of them, although I think we always should be open to changing our views with more information, but to expanding the worldview, and thinking about what the implications of that new worldview would be like. I wasn't someone, I was someone who accepted that racism exists. I am someone who has a problem with inequity and think that there's some basis in race, because how the hell would be so unequal if it were not for some historical experience having, right? Like but at the same time, when Andre expressed to me his fear for his safety, which is, in the first episode of we put that forward because it was like a pivotal moment in our conversation really early on, it took me aback. I was not expecting that. That's not the Andre that I know. I had no idea he carried that around with him, and I had to understand it. And when he started to explain to me and give me a sense of, you know, maybe that's not every white person, but you don't know which white person you're going to be coming up, you know, interacting with. And I had to really contemplate, yeah, if I knew that some possibly hurtful experiences out there, and I don't know how to understand between one person or another on their face, then I can understand that skepticism, right? It opened my worldview a little bit more, a lot more, I think, to understand where he's coming from. And I would have never been dismissive of his experience because it's just not my character, but I would have been blocked in my understanding of it, right? And it caused me to change my views in some ways, or at least my understanding of the world as it related to race. But there's still, but I don't have to give up my own experience in doing that. And even my views of how to, or I'll give you another tangible example because it's about a way to get to equity. I'm someone, I mean, I don't know, like I just grew up with a sense of fairness. It was my parents, maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's growing up with my grandparents, but when something is done wrong, something needs to be done right. That's just my way of being. So when the topic of reparations comes around, I'm like, hell yeah, why not? I mean, let's get to understand the details of it, but there was something grievously done wrong. Something needs to happen to make it right. When we could differ on our points of view on it. And so when the idea of like, is there some cash payment? Is there, you know, I'm open to the idea. I don't know if that's the right way, but I'm open to it. But Andre said something to me when we just I casually brought up this conversation. He said, yeah, I'm not so into like the cash thing. I want invest, like for me, it's investment. Mm-hmm. It's because if you pay some cash, it's like, okay, we're done with the conversation. And like, you're not still in relationship with me. You're not telling me you care about me. Right.
It'll be like, here's this cash, racism's over. And
right.
It's like,
yeah.
it
was even something deeper than that, because it was like, we want you to see us as humans worthy of care. And that cash payment doesn't signify that, but your investment in us to bring us to equality, that tells me something. That tells me you care. And I got to tell you, like, it made me even rethink the idea of reparations and what that could look like. Right. So, you know, but have I given up all of my like political inclinations? No, I haven't. Do Andre and I still disagree? Of course we do. But it's, you know, not resting, as Andre put it, on my laurels of like the good person that I hope I am and have been in my past, to say, hey, there's an understanding of the world that I just don't have because I didn't grow up Black, and I need to understand that, and then I need to contemplate the implications. And Andre has been willing to do the same in reverse, as he just shared, right? And there's people who don't want to do that on either side, but there's plenty of people, I think, who are open to it and can get past the moment where, you know, Felicia has her very strong feelings about education, and Randy has her very strong feelings about, you know, am I the one responsible for what X person did way back then? But, you know, can get through those strong feelings and actually say, well, what's behind that, right? And let's have a conversation to, you know, where our conversation has led us now, which I think has been pretty productive. I think there's way more to go, you know, but I think the fact that we can continue to have the conversation beyond those points of strong emotion, I think is important. So that's the way I take.
Right. And Randy, I just want you to know, if you questioning, am I responsible? The answer is yes. Because we're all responsible. We're all in this. None of us chose to be here. I don't think any of us came down from heaven before we were born and picked our parents and said, you gonna be my parent. Like, none, we didn't do that. Right. So we're all responsible. And the problem is so many people trying not to be responsible. And we're responsible because of the next generation coming up behind us. And we're responsible to create a world that's better for them than it was for us. When you know better, you do better.
I was just getting ready to say that. That's another Maya Angelou quote.
So you're saying, what I'm understanding, not only am I responsible for my grandchildren and what I've imparted through 3 generations, but I'm also responsible for your grandchildren
But I'm
And-
responsible for your grandchildren. We're
Mhm.
responsible for each other.
We hold each other in love. Yes.
Right. the
Yes,
humanity.
we so busy being distracted by this idea of whose fault it is. It's all of our fault. We have to own it, all of us today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's super important, that shared responsibility and that distinction, Felicia, that you just said, which is a responsibility not for the past, but for what we've been given from the past, for the present into the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
And I can just tell you, I tout Andre and his engagement on this,
My book is coming out.
No, he when he heard not that he wasn't this way previously, because he's had already relationships even prior to us meeting with people in the Jewish community that I know mattered a lot to him, but through additional conversation, through our conversations, he had an experience where he called out kind of an anti-Semitic I can't remember trope. You asked a question, Randy, earlier, like I would hope that you would want to know about me too, to kind of the Black participants, right? And I think I've experienced these engagements as not being one-sided. I know that Andre, would go to bat to defend Indy if something would fall for with regard to anti-Semitism. I would trust him in a second. So I think, and it's not just because he's my friend, it's because we've had conversation and he's validated through action after the conversation his understanding of the Jewish history and Jewish community, that I know where his heart is with regard to that. Does that mean he has perfect understanding of the Jewish history? No, he doesn't. I don't have perfect understanding of the racial past and the history that the Black community has had here, but that extra understanding and the willingness to do something different, when you show that, I genuinely think it's shared both ways. I mean, I have not experienced my interactions with people in the Black community around this issue as being you just solve this racial problem. It's how, as Felicia said, we're responsible for one another for creating something different. That's how I've experienced. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I've always felt the reciprocity there.
Well, there has to be, but again, reciprocity starts with you. If I'm around somebody and they're super quote unquote Christian churchy and they say something about the LGBTQ community, I'm responsible to correct them. If there's somebody around me who says something anti-Semitic, I'm responsible to correct them, right? Even though I don't identify in any of those boxes, I still take ownership and responsibility because I want my humanity, as the boxes I check as a Black woman, to be honored, to be recognized. And in order to do that, I have to take responsibility to recognize and honor other people's humanity. And I have to take that mantle on and I have to own it. And whatever, like, let's say I went to a certain church and I brought Andre to church with me and they said something backwards. We getting up and leaving. Because that ain't church.
Yeah.
That ain't God.
Or you educate them about why it's wrong. Maybe.
Sure, if I have that opportunity. But what I'm not going to do is subject a fellow human to dehumanization.
Right.
I'm not going to stand for it. And so no matter how uncomfortable it may make me, no matter how it may make me look.
Michelle, you had something you just wanted to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I am my brother's keeper.
Exactly.
And I think if more people thought that way, like I said, I gave the example of, going to lunch and, her saying towel head. I was offended. I'm not Muslim. I'm not, Middle Eastern. I'm none of those, but I was offended. That wasn't okay. But had I said nothing, she would continue to think that that's okay. Just because I wasn't of that particular, as Felicia says, I don't check that particular box. but I wasn't okay. And I called her out on it. And like I said, had she shown some type of remorse for it, then we probably would have still been, cool with each other. But because she didn't, it's like, you've shown me who you are. I'm done with you. I choose not to be around people who believe in that way. A lot of times silence is acceptance.
I have to say this conversation for me personally has been it's been challenging in a very good way. And it's been,
Awesome.
and it's been empowering as well. It's been challenging in a good way because, you think you've got it, you think you understand, pretty well, or maybe kind of, but when you hear people's personal experiences and their concerns, their fears, all of those things, it makes it real. And it helps. It really helps to energize you and to give you incentive and some empowerment to really try to make a difference. You can read Ibram Kendi and you can think, okay, I know how to be anti-racist. Well, no, you don't if you haven't been there and walked in those shoes, but you've got some incentive to try to be better, to understand more, and to help in whatever, like John Wesley, our inspiration in the Methodist Church is John Wesley. And he said, his most famous quote is, do all the good that you can to all the people that you can, in all the ways that you can, and all the places that you can, and all the times that you can, as long as ever you can. I'm going to make a bunch of mistakes when you're trying to do that, but at least you're trying to head in the right direction. And you've helped me. Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing, because there's a little part of me that starts feeling defensive because I say, all the things that you two are doing, well, I'm doing that too. I speak up, against racism, and I do all this. But I think what you're asking me for, and Andre, I think this is what you're saying, is you can't just rest on your laurels. You have to keep going. You have to go deeper. You have to do more. You have to talk to other people about it. You have to insist that other people, like you say, there's this big injustice that's happened in this world, and we have to keep talking about it. So my defensiveness is, whoa, I'm doing that. And then the other part of me is you're saying, keep doing it, do it more. And this is important.
Yeah, because real change comes from being uncomfortable.
If you've ever worked out, that's true.
That's all. That was weird, right? I was like, yeah, because I keep going to this gym. I keep
tomorrow. I'm like, ooh, I don't feel like it.
I keep going, and this is my lifelong battle. Yes,
that's what Marietta, you were saying too, right? That that person in the Methodist church has said you have to just keep doing it,
as long as ever you can.
Yeah. And you're not always gonna get it right. I know I don't. Hell,
and you're not always going to talk to someone who wants to engage with you like that. So
absolutely.
You have to have respect for your own self too. If you get shouted down, listen, like Michelle said, everyone has something in the back seat. There's probably some reason they shouted you down for it, and I'm sorry you didn't get to have a conversation around it. But that's not the whole of how that doesn't define the kinds of all the experiences you will have moving forward. I mean, there's plenty of people who are willing to engage with your ideas that may be controversial and may make them uncomfortable too. And, through that process, you'll probably expand each other's point of view at the very least.
Yeah, you can't let it define you. Again, as crazy as it sounds, because I'll be 55 shortly. Brian Driscoll was in the 11th grade, but when he reached out and said, I liked you too, I was like a giddy schoolgirl for 2 seconds, just because he acknowledged, it wasn't you. It was, what was going on at the time. This, my parents wouldn't have allowed it. All of these things. And by the way, I've seen, pictures of his grandchildren. They're biracial.
No.
Surprise.
He's definitely grown over the years. And so I had to be accepting of who he is now compared to who he needed to be at that time.
Well, you just took us to a full circle moment. You gave us the rest of the story. So maybe this is a good time to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to say goodbye to all of you. I feel like, we got on. I was really nervous about getting on to this call. I was like, oh my God, what's everyone going to be like? And you were all strangers to me. And then now I feel like I'm getting to know you. And it's, kind of sad.
I'm glad to hear that. I really am.
Yeah, because it was a safe space.
Todd and Andre, thank you so much.
Thank you for being a gift to the world, all four of you.
Totally.
Keep doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, viewers at home.
Thank you for watching this episode of Healing Race, and stay with us for a scene from our next video.
If you want to see more conversations like the one you just watched, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with friends and family, and like and comment on the video below.
If you'd like to be a guest on one of our episodes and have an open, real conversation about race, email us at guests@healingraceshow.com.
And if there are topics you think we should cover, we'd love to hear them. So please email your ideas to topics@healingraceshow.com.
As always, thanks for your support. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Now, here's a scene from our next Healing Race.
How do you know it's, maybe there is something in your particular performance that might be something that she wants to work on with you, or that maybe it is racist and she hasn't said it to any of your white colleagues. So I'm just curious about that.
And this is always the dilemma, right? Because it's always a subtle thing. It's hard to pinpoint because it's predicated on people's intentions, and you don't always know what another person's intention is. But what I go by to make determinations is, am I being treated differently, or does this person show up the same way all the time? And when you're in a team environment, you see how you see how people interact with you, and then you see how they interact with others, and your spirit senses the difference, and the difference. And not everybody operates in that way. So I don't go around thinking everybody's racist.
To watch the rest of that episode, go ahead and click the video below me.
To see a different compelling Healing Race episode, you can click the video below me. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.